Hello, everyone. Welcome to Where Are All the Women? Sorry we're late. Again. I wonder if I should just stop saying that. I wonder if people are just sick of the apologies for lateness.
Are you really sorry?
Yes, I always feel bad. This is actually a big annoyance that I have with people who don't people who are very angry and irritated by the late people. I'm a late person. Because what they always do is they assume that it's about them. Like they take it as a sign of disrespect. Like, well, you don't care about my time, or like, this isn't important to you then. Or yeah, they think that like you just don't care at all. But I do care, and I feel bad, and I feel guilty about it. But I mean, I don't know. Just people should stop taking most things personal. I think that we should all accept the fact that for the most part, other people's behavior is really mostly only about them and doesn't have much to do with anybody else at all.
Yeah. I think not personalizing things is a key component of good mental health.
Yeah, I think I'm like pretty good about that. I do falter sometimes and invent stories inside my head and so on and so forth. But I think in general, I try to just be like, okay, don't know what's going on with that person. Okay, we were struggling with Mary Lou's microphone connection again this week, like last week. So I don't know if it sounds okay for you guys on your end, but let us know. And if it's, I mean, I can hear you. So hopefully it's okay. It's probably not ideal because we weren't able to connect to the rubber mic, but we can figure this out hopefully another time. How are you doing, Mary Lou?
I'm doing okay. Yeah. Just, I feel so overwhelmed with the state of the world. Like it's just rapid fire craziness. And where I'm living in New Mexico, the collapse of our infrastructure is happening so quickly, especially in the healthcare system. So trying not to personalize that and trying to just adapt to reality, to align with the reality that we live in.
Well, I don't know that we're living in reality. I feel like we're living in Groundhog's Day, and I'm feeling really like frustrated by it, like super frustrated by it. I mean, wait, first of all, everybody who's watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Important. If I can remember anything ever. Like, I don't know, man. I just feel like we're doing the same cycle over and over and over again, and everybody keeps falling for it. And I really like it's really kind of making me feel like I'm going to lose my mind because I just can't. I'm like, and in a variety of different contexts. You know, this obviously just happened in Canada where, you know, the Canadians completely forgot that the Liberal Party destroyed Canada over 10 years and reelected the Liberal Party thinking that they were going to affect change in doing so. And it made me feel crazy, as everybody knows, based on my talking and writing about it. And now, you know, with these riots that are happening in LA, and I'm seeing everybody in my Instagram feed, you know, immediately glom onto the narrative. And, you know, this is all about racism and, you know, Trump is bad and whatever, you know, like it's the exact same narrative and there's only one response and the response is obvious and everybody should be on that side and anybody who isn't is this horrible bad person. And I don't think anybody ever thinks, hey, maybe I don't really understand what's going on.
Or maybe I'm propagandized, and that's a different way of not understanding what's going on. But maybe I shouldn't believe every bit of outrage fodder that is fed to me through my favorite propaganda streams.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you guys remember when BLM happened and everybody on Instagram started posting black squares and everybody decided that, you know, this was about racist police brutality and, you know, Trump is bad, the right is bad, there's a racist America and an unracist America, there's like a good and a bad, and, you know, protests pop up all around the world to show solidarity with the thing that precipitated this protest in the US. And it all turned out to be a sham, first of all. nobody knew the real narrative. Nobody really understand what happened with George Floyd and a bunch of other situations that were labeled as racism or racist police violence. And like, you know, I just feel like it's the exact same thing happening again. And, you know, like I'm seeing people in my Instagram stories be like, unfriend me and block me if you're okay with what's going on in Gaza and, you know, with ICE right now, like, fuck you. Like, I'm just like, can you stop? Like, how many times do we have to do this? I guess forever. Like, clearly I'm like, like, it's hard for even, I just feel so exhausted and frustrated by it all. Because these, I don't know if these people didn't notice what ended up playing out with BLM. Like, I think they maybe just ejected that from their brains because they don't want to see the truth. Or if they just forget, like, we obviously have a problem with not remembering history or what happened last week or last year, 4 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So
I know. I think they can't let themselves acknowledge the grift and corruption and just insanity that the BLM leaders, the people who took the money, engaged in. They can't allow themselves to think about that. I've heard people say, well, the spirit of the movement was good, even though the people spearheading it stole everybody's money and bought mansions and partied and just blew all the money, right? They just, you know, it didn't actually help poor Black people. It enriched a few people at the top of their organization.
Well, not only that, but I don't think it was in response to anything real.
Yeah.
Like there isn't an epidemic of racist police violence. Like there's plenty of data that shows that there's plenty of police violence against, you know, white people as well, white men particularly as well. Like none of it's real, I don't think.
No, I mean the killing of George Floyd being filmed by so many people was very upsetting. It was upsetting to watch, but nobody really looked at the data that Black men are not more likely to be killed by the police in the United States than white men or any other demographic. I think that Native Americans are more likely to be killed than any other group. It's a very small segment of the population, but they experience a lot of police brutality. But other than that, there's not a lot of difference across demographics. And I mean, there was I wish I knew his name. What is his name? Is it Ronald something at Harvard who analyzed that data and actually was threatened with loss of tenure for publishing his data? And he's a Black man who tried over and over and over again to prove that Black men were being targeted by the police and murdered disproportionately by the police, and he couldn't find it. His data showed otherwise, and people were so angry with him for publishing.
Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, I think that's so representative of how the left approaches every issue. Like, it's not, I don't know, I was talking about this with a friend briefly. I, of course, didn't bring it up because I tend to avoid not bringing up politics as much as possible. But I think she said something like, it was like, oh, well, you know, like what's going on in the US and deporting Mexicans and racism, yada, 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 like deporting immigrants. And I was like, well, but I was like, I don't like what's going on either. You know, like I like Mexicans. You know what I mean? Obviously, I love Mexico. I love Mexicans. I think that Mexicans in the US for the most part are awesome. Like it's, you know, like it's not, immigration has never been a big issue for me. Like I see what's going on now and I'm really troubled by it, you know, in terms of like Canada, you know, young people can't find work. People are losing access to these sort of lower wage service jobs or importing, you know, and a huge number of immigrants and spending all this money, you know, putting them up and taking care of them and so on and so forth. And meanwhile, you know, regular Canadians can't afford to buy groceries and like, it just seems like a bad scene. And a lot of these guys, the immigrants are these young, single men from Arab countries who hate the West and have really disgusting, misogynist, homophobic values. Like,
Right.
it's not a good scene. Like, it's really worrying. We all see what's going on in the UK, of course, and Europe in general to a more extreme level. But like, so I understand but it's not like it's ever been my passion. But at the same time, I'm like, but the people who are being deported are illegals, and I don't know what to tell you about that. Like, no, it's not a great situation all the time. Maybe it is if these are like dangerous, violent criminals, but like, I don't know everything about everybody that's being deported, but like, what do you want? Like, you can't say no borders. You can't say everybody who wants to be here can just be here, and then, start violent protests and riots and start burning down LA when people who are here illegally are deported. But anyway, so I said to my friend, I was like, but I mean, they are like, these people are illegal. They're not here legally. And she was like, well, you've been here illegally. And I was like, no, I haven't. I've never been here illegally. I've been here legally the whole time. But like, you're just making shit up. They're not. She was like, yes, they are. They're deporting legal immigrants. I'm like, no, they're not. How would you deport someone who is here legally? That doesn't make any sense. Like, you're just making shit up. None of these people have any idea what they're talking about. And I'm not saying that I know everything that I'm talking about, but I've posted nothing about this issue in my Instagram stories. So like, have some humility,
Well, they're primarily going after people with records of violence or warrants after them for extreme violence. I don't believe they're actually randomly targeting immigrants.
No.
I think occasionally undocumented people are getting caught up in the immigration rates. Like, if they are present in the place where the person that ICE has a warrant for is being searched for, or is, when they're there at the time of the ICE raid, they're getting picked up within it. But ICE is not targeting random immigrants. They're targeting people who are here with terrible records of violence.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've understood as well. And, and I also said, and I've said, I was like, Trump is doing what he was elected to do.
Exactly.
For better, for worse, like it or not, and you don't like Trump. So obviously you don't like what he's doing. But the people of America elected Trump democratically, and they elected him to do this, to deal with the immigration problem. So he's doing what he said he was gonna do. What do you expect to happen? Like, what is it that you want?
We're not a country if we don't have a border. I do want to thank the people in comments for saying Roland Fryer. That's who did that study. People should really look up his work, Roland Fryer. People are fed up with the open border situation. People want to actually have a country that has laws and that are enforced, and a meaningful definition of who we are as a country. If you don't have a border, you don't exist as a nation anymore. I don't know what people think they're going to accomplish by rioting either. And I know all the leftist talking points of, what is it? A riot is the voice of the oppressed. It's the communication of the oppressed. And that this is the only way they can speak up, or this is mostly peaceful with a few bad apples. But setting a whole Waymo fleet on fire in LA doesn't help improve the lives of undocumented people. All it does is piss off normies and make people clamor for more law and order, which probably is going to create a situation none of us are really going to enjoy.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the other thing, is that the left seems completely incapable of understanding what their actions, what they advocate for, the protests that they're engaged in and supporting, and what that looks like to most normal people in America and even around the world, because the media and social media is so biased in their favor, and they're so, they're operating within their political bubbles always. I mean, again, it's the same thing that happened during BLM. It's also similar to what happened in a sort of different way during the Freedom Convoy protests, where, all of these lefties who, were all, middle and upper class elites, like, overeducated people, you know, mostly white people, you know, it's like all my progressive friends back in Vancouver, all these like white, pretty well off, pretty privileged, overeducated people who all agreed that the convoy was bad, that they were fascist, that they were dangerous, that they were violent. None of those things were true. And they couldn't fathom that anybody would see things differently than they, and if people did exist who saw things differently, they were also Nazis and violent and dangerous or stupid or whatever. And you know, the framing of, I was reading, Matt Taibbi has written about this, and I was reading his Substack today, and he said, once again, the public is being trained in distinctions between illegitimate and legitimate protest, regressive force versus righteous resistance.
Exactly. And they're falling for it. I know these are the people who were so opposed to genuinely peaceful legal demonstrations against the COVID lockdowns. I heard the same people who are telling me how great it is. People are rioting in LA, advocating for everybody who showed up at an anti-mask protest to be rounded up and locked up and have their kids taken away. I think that people probably both on the right and the left, they like their brand of authoritarianism. They like their brand of government overreach, but it's just so glaring right now that the insanity and the programming, it's almost like Pavlovian programming, that they just respond however their propaganda masters want them to respond and don't think anything through and have no self-awareness about their hypocrisy.
No, and I mean, Abby in the comments says, I'm confused about what they get out of destroying their own city. I mean, it all just seems like, and the BLM riots as well, it's like destruction for the sake of destruction. These riots tend to really, really hurt immigrant communities, actually, and poor and working class people. Like that also happened with the LA riots way back when, right? You know, those riots really harmed immigrant communities. You know, these little businesses were burnt down and destroyed. The whole community was destroyed, you know, and this was an immigrant community. And those riots started because of a clash between Black people and Koreans. That wasn't a Black on white thing, you know?
Well, there's the Rodney King riots, and then in the 60s.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I'm talking about. Thanks for clarifying.
And the riots in the 60s after the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Malcolm X. You know, when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, there were whole swaths of Pittsburgh that were still destroyed from the riots that happened before I was even born. They'd never recovered. The places, whole neighborhoods still burned out, had never recovered. It's always the poor who are most harmed by this behavior. And I don't understand again why people can't see that. It's also, you know, it's easy to get desperate, poor, young males in particular, but you know, there are women participating in this too. People who think they have nothing to lose are more likely to go out and throw rocks and burn stuff to the ground and not value their surroundings. So there is, you know, people within those communities are often destroying their community, but it's not the small business owners. It's not the people just trying to live their lives and have a better, you know, just have a better future for themselves and their kids that are throwing the rocks and smashing the storefronts and burning things.
Well, and I mean, do you like these protests / riots are so well organized and they seem to be funded, and that part is weird as well. You know, how do they organize so quickly en masse?
Well, that's interesting, and I'm sure somebody has looked into that and can show us the you know, the data of how that happens and who's funding it and what their communication streams are. But obviously, this isn't an entirely organic phenomenon. This is something being orchestrated, or it wouldn't be happening to this level.
I mean, so I don't know if you saw this, but Local Distance posted this whole thread on X saying the riots happening in LA are not organic or spontaneous. They're designed to look chaotic to cover up the fact that they're well-funded, exceptionally organized, and carried out by well-trained activists using intelligent, highly developed tactics. And he goes through some, proof of this. He says, first, the protesters have shields. These types of shields were used by the 2024 pro-Hamas rioters and the 2020 BLM rioters. Each shield takes 3 hours to make, and activists spend all day making them. That's not spontaneous. It takes planning. And he shows some pictures of these protest signs that look like regular protest signs, but he says those shields are not cardboard signs. They're designed to look like cardboard signs. They're in fact made of plywood, and they have metal handles. They have a cardboard side attached to the front to disguise the fact that they're made of wood. In 2020, these shields were brought in and distributed to rioters in organized drops. In LA, we see the same strategy. They hand out protective equipment to rioters who then use them in their attacks. Yeah, like it. And then he says, it isn't just the shields that are planned. Everything is, from what rioters wear to the tactics used in each situation. They're implementing highly developed theory to protest violence in order to create pressure and try to force politicians to give in. I mean, because I think one of the common questions, and yeah, a lot of people in the comments are asking this as well, is like, what's the point of this? Like, what's the end goal? I don't know. I mean, is it just chaos?
I think a lot of these people legitimately want to usher in socialism and communism. As my time as a leftist, I've been to plenty of protests, anti-war rallies, anti-globalization protests, and they're always, the socialist organizations, the revolutionary communists. I mean, I hung out with the revolutionary communists on the Stop Patriarchy Abortion Freedom Ride. They're well funded. They have an agenda. It seems like a joke, but it's not. They have funding, and they're waiting for an opportunity to seize it. And then there are ruling class forces that think they would benefit from that happening as well, right? From pushing more of that. There are these organized groups. There's Answer. They're a socialist group that is incredibly well funded, that would show up at every single anti-war march that I ever went to. And it was like, where do they come from? How do they organize? How do they have all these signs that they've already printed beforehand? There is a well-organized leftist machine, and they do trainings. I've been to trainings about tree sits. I've been to trainings about nonviolent civil disobedience. I've been to trainings about locking your arms together in a PVC pipe, locking your neck to something with a bike lock. They are well trained. And then there's just the random chaos factor. And then there are paid infiltrators who are there just to create chaos, and nobody really knows who's putting those people in. When I was in the anti-globalization movement, people thought it was the CIA or the feds, the FBI. I don't know. It could be BlackRock. It could be, and there's so many factors at play right now about how the next ruling structure of the world is going to arise as this one is seeming to crumble.
Yeah. I mean, if I were a conspiracy theorist, which I clearly am, it seems like there is a real effort to destroy Western civilization to create sort of like a global borderless economy / world. I can't see what's happening in Canada any differently at this point. Because it seems that they've gone so far out of their way to destroy the economy and jobs, and to, put people in such a, I think people have just given up, right? Like I don't think they feel that they have any power or control or options other than to depend on the government. About 50% of people in Canada, I think, work for the government now.
Wow.
Yeah. So, they're dependent on the government for their jobs, for, their benefits and all of that. And without those jobs, they and their families can't survive or go to the dentist or whatever. And then everybody else, you know, their businesses and their employment, so much of those businesses and employment was destroyed during COVID. A lot of people who lost their jobs during COVID haven't gone back to work. And yeah, you know, the Vancouver completely changed, and I think all cities did during COVID, because all of these little businesses who, you know, were making it, but you know, it's a struggle in places like that. Rent is so expensive, couldn't make it, and they were just all replaced by big box or chains or, you know, more moneyed businesses. And you know, what are all those people supposed to do? Rely on the government. And then you bring in all these immigrants, you put them in all the low wage jobs, the jobs that you would be working at when you were 16 or so, you know, or if you were just, you know, working class or poor, what do? You rely on the government. And that's just such a perfect way to control people. And again, to, I think, make them feel really helpless. And like they have no real control over their lives or choices.
And then I don't know if this is happening in Canada, but when you add in the marketing and creation of chronic illness and the psych meds and the absolute dependence on pharmaceuticals, people are even more dependent on the government and more allegiant to the parts of the government that tell them that they'll keep giving them drugs, like, you know, the free healthcare aspect of the marketing of political forces. You know?
Yeah, how are you going to afford your like depression drugs?
And your Ozempic and your cross-sex hormones and
that you need because you're sick.
Yeah, and your AIDS drugs, where you will die if you don't take them, and they're hundreds of thousands a year. The way that big pharma has captured the left with the birth control, the AIDS drugs, the antidepressants, the gender, you know, drugs, the vaccines, that's you know, so much of what's going on politically and shaping people's allegiances right now too. Yeah.
I mean, they're a Liberal Party, Kim Pate, an MP, is bringing back another UBI bill, like universal basic income in Canada. I mean, it's almost impossible to see that this isn't the plan.
Yeah, the UBI. And then on the right, you know, on the other side of the manufacturer divide, people are clamoring for more surveillance and more law and order and more enforcement of the law through Palantir technology and through locking us into a police state because we don't want our cities burning down. They're like, the power structures are really playing this moment, and it's terrifying to me that people are playing into it.
I know. I'm sorry to be so like unhappy, but I just can't believe this is happening again. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing that happened during BLM, and now we're just gonna, like, are we just gonna go through this all over again? Yes, I guess so. And yeah, I mean, and the destruction of Europe through mass immigration and this,
there aren't protests happening. Well, I guess there are protests, but they're being cracked down upon there, right?
And like, yeah, and I mean, obviously these activists on the left do, you know, and I used to be in support of this on some level. Theoretically, I never engaged in these kinds of protests or rioting or anything like that. I wasn't interested in that, but like, I think I was supportive on some level. You know, I remember being like, yeah, diversity of tactics. And what diversity of tactics means is that some people get to be violent. That's what diversity of tactics means. It doesn't mean peaceful protest. It means, sure, peaceful protest and then also rioting, violence, because diversity, like, what else would that mean?
Right. It's a scary time. I don't know how this is going to play out. Like that, you know, people are so angry at Trump calling in the National Guard and the Marines to quell the absolute unrest that's happening. But
like, what do you do? Like, let it burn?
Yeah, just let the whole city burn to the ground. Let people just attack the police, kill police officers. Remember in the George Floyd riots in Minneapolis, that the local government let those rioters burn a police precinct to the ground. They just let them burn it down. It was total lawlessness.
Mostly peaceful protests, which they're doing again now. I think that they're using those narratives again. I mean,
yeah.
And then just the juxtaposition of what, like that quote that I read from Taibbi earlier about, what's legitimate versus illegitimate protest. And it's like, a genuinely peaceful protest that was fighting for the charter rights of all Canadians. It was all legal. This is bad and this is dangerous. And it was right for the government to invoke the Emergencies Act to crack down on that protest. At the time, most Canadians supported that. I think some people changed their minds after the fact. But a lot of Canadians supported what Trudeau did. What he did was illegal. Those protests weren't illegal. He illegally invoked the Emergencies Act so that he could freeze people's bank accounts and jail people for engaging in these peaceful protests. And the same people who are supporting the riots in LA right now, and the same people who supported the BLM riots, hated the convoy people and pretended as though that was somehow dangerous and disruptive because of honking. That you're honking. Right. So there's some honking, and that's so traumatizing to you. But burning down communities and people's businesses and using literal violence against people, that's all good and justified, legitimate, fair, legal.
Yeah, it's really something. I am feeling so completely I don't know if alienated is the right word. I'm just living in stupefaction at how crazy the left is going, and just what a completely different reality they are living in, and what I'm perceiving, what people that don't agree with them are perceiving. And I don't think that the country has ever been more polarized in my lifetime. I imagine during the Civil War, things were even more polarized than they are right now. But that was regional, it was a regional polarization. This feels like a diffuse across the country polarization. And I don't even know what it would look like to have a civil war. It's just going to be massive unrest rather than two factions battling it out, I think. And it's very concerning to me.
Yeah, and I don't know what the solution is when people are this polarized, when half of the population wants something so radically different than the other half, and one of those halves seems to want the destruction of America or the destruction of Western civilization. It's still connected to the pro-Hamas protests and all this horrific anti-Semitism that's happening and the violence that's happening in connection with this. People being murdered while the murderer yells "Free Palestine," and that's somehow justifiable by the left. That's legitimate.
A man in Boulder, of all places, one of the most wealthy, incredibly so-called privileged places on the planet, just set Jewish people on fire and yelling "Free Palestine," and there's no outrage about it. And I do think that most leftists I know think it was somewhat justified. They just feel like that's the way it goes. If those people were pro-Israel, if they think Israel has a right to exist, if they're not calling for the complete depopulation of the Jews from the Middle East, then they should be killed.
And how are the normies, and how are people like us supposed to live in a country with people who like terrorism and who do want chaos and who do want the destruction of civilization? This doesn't seem possible or like a good plan. This is why I keep being like, I don't know, Alberta should separate. or, join the US, or, maybe the blue states should all join Canada and Alberta can go with the US or something like that. It's like, this doesn't seem workable to me. And it's, on one hand, I sort of feel conflicted about that because I think it's good to be around people who are different than you.
Mhm.
But I don't know that it would be, like, I don't consider myself right wing.
No, I don't.
Or Republican,
No.
like, I don't align with a lot of those values. Some of them, sure.
Right.
But like, it's more, to me, it's like freedom oriented or sovereignty oriented or like peace oriented, even. Like, you could even say that, although I'm sure the leftists would protest at that kind of labeling somehow, because maybe they consider themselves, I don't know, does the left even consider itself to be anti-war anymore? Because they don't seem to be anti-war. So it'd be funny if they still believed that.
No, I don't think they're anti-war at all. I know. I don't know what exactly they're for, but I do think if you really tried to pin them down, they want socialism or communism. That's what they want. They want free healthcare. I don't know what they mean by free and how they think that's going to happen. There's like where I live.
What do they mean by healthcare even?
I know, right?
Made?
Like, yeah, made, exactly. Which is probably, I mean, where I live, we don't have any doctors. Like, it is so bad. The provider shortage is so bad here. And all of these upper middle class liberals are just like, well, we need universal healthcare. I'm like, who's going to provide it? Robots and suicide booths. That is what's going to happen. That is the future of healthcare. I mean, on top of that, the few doctors we do have, many of them trained during COVID and have no skills and are completely addled in their minds and no respect for the elders in medicine. It's just a shit show here. So they want free healthcare. They want universal basic income. Those are two things they want. That's communism. That's socialism, right? Which is it? I've heard them say they don't want anyone to be able to be allowed to own more than one property. So they don't want middle class people to be able to have a vacation home or an Airbnb or to have a rental for extra income. That's communism. I think they want land reforms. They're not upset about Bill Gates and China buying up all the farmland in our country, but they're mad at their middle class neighbor for having an Airbnb that she rents out.
They're not mad about fentanyl coming across the border, which, that's all provided essentially by China. China provides all of the ingredients for Mexico to make fentanyl, and then it just smoothly slides across the border and kills millions of people. But that's all good. That's all good. Just give them more drugs. Like, let them die out on the sidewalk. This is what the left seems to be advocating.
Well, I think that they are de facto advocating for manufacturing more and more dysfunction. So many people I know in the left work in the poverty management industry and the social work industry and the special education industry. And they can't step back and understand that there's they're dependent on manufacturing more and more and more pathology, or they're all going to be out of jobs. And that there is an incentive to label as many children disabled as possible and to create as much actual legitimate, disability and poor health in our entire population as possible, because that's what keeps the money flowing. That keeps the population dependent on the government and completely unable to take care of themselves. So they don't see the forces behind it. The many leftists I know feel like there's underdiagnosing going on, and they're really interested in so-called mental health and making sure kids get early intervention and sending government workers into every home where there are children to do an assessment and bring services. Communism, like, this is China, like that's what they want. And it feels so cliche to say that growing up in the Reagan era. Now I'm calling everyone a communist.
I know.
It sure seems like that's actually what's happening.
Well, and what else is covered under healthcare is all these, trans surgeries and puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for minors and for adults. How is it that, violent criminals in prison are able to access sex changes so very quickly, but there's Canadians who are dying on wait lists for surgeries that they need to live. Like, how are all these minors getting rushed through mastectomies when people in Canada are dying on wait lists? Like, what the fuck is going on?
I have patients waiting months and months to have moles that are almost certainly a melanoma by the primary care provider's assessment looked at, like, but yeah, you can get cross-sex hormones tomorrow. You can, like the trans community says jump and the establishment says how high. Like they can claim extreme discrimination if they don't get their gender affirming surgeries whenever they ask for them.
Well, and what you were saying earlier about like creating disability, I mean, that's what these surgeries, like when you're putting kids on puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones, I think you are disabling them for life. Not only just through sterilization, but things like bone development, muscle development, brain development, like all those other things that are disabled when you're not able to develop properly as an adult and go through puberty to become a healthy adult. And then on top of that, the things like these horrible surgeries that are all experimental and don't really stick, and you have to they get infections and they fall off. I don't know if you watched that clip from Mia Hughes from my podcast last week where she described, I mean, you know all of this, of course, but like I asked her to describe how phalloplasties worked, and it's so gruesome and horrific, and they don't work. They don't stick, they don't take, they don't function, they're disgusting, they're riddled with infections and all these other horror show scenarios that I won't get into.
But thing that anyone is doing that, and the complication rate is well over 75%, that they, like you're saying, they don't. And that's just the documented extreme complications. Like it's always a nightmare. And you don't get anything even resembling a penis out of it. All you get is this like Frankenstein looking
appendage. Yeah. I mean, they are like, they're creating patients for life, right? You're dependent, excuse me, not only on the hormones for the rest of your life, you have to, because then you revert back to some sort of other version of a freak show, because you can't go fully back. You can't actually fully detransition after going on those drugs. That stuff is, so much of that stuff is irreversible. But just the treatments that you need because you've been made sick and because you have all these dysfunctional surgeries now.
And your endocrine system doesn't function. Like these kids can't produce their own estrogen. They can't produce their own testosterone. They never went through puberty. Their ovaries and testes never developed. And then often those organs are then removed. It's, if you put a prepubescent child on so-called puberty blockers and then put them on cross-sex hormones, their own testes and ovaries never actually mature to start producing hormones. I still can't believe this is happening, but this is a sacrament on the left. They love the transgender medicine. It is what they are ultimately allegiant to. This is one of their sacred pillars.
It's difficult not to hate them, but I just think they're all brainwashed. Like I don't think that most of them are evil. It's so evil what's happening, but I just think these people are so convinced that they're doing the right thing in every single thing that they do and every single thing that they advocate. Again, burning down communities, riots, violence, so on and so forth. Their literal hatred towards people who don't see things their way, their death wish on people who have the bad religion and not the good religion, which I guess is like what? Muslim, Sharia law, like that's what you want. Like what do you want here?
They will not let themselves criticize Islam. They love Islam, which is completely batshit crazy. And again, we just need to look at what happened in Iran and how that's going to go. The alliance of the left with radical Islam is. We know how that plays out because we have examples of it. Yeah, or even after that, the Arab Spring, and all that did was empower the Muslim Brotherhood and all of these other radical Islamist, organizations that took over all of those countries. And now the women in those countries are in worse positions than they were under these dictators that were ousted.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have a skeptical bone in their bodies. They buy, like you said before, they buy all the propaganda unquestioningly, and they're certain that they're right. And it's really dangerous. And I don't know what can be done to fix that. I don't know if there's anything. I mean, it really does kind of make you want to check out.
But I really feel for the healthy, functional people right now who just want to have what's left of the American dream, where it's like, okay, if I work hard, I can have my weekends off, I can have my own house, I can have a bit of agency over my life. Not perfection, nothing's ever utopia, but people just want to take care of themselves, be healthy, have kids who play on the football team, have girls who get to compete against other girls on the track team, have kids that aren't addicted to a bunch of psych meds and mutilating their bodies. That is a shrinking population. And as we progress, the burden that's going to be placed on the functional people is just going to be larger and larger and larger. I don't know how the functional people are going to be able to hold the weight of all of these completely sick, incapacitated, dysfunctional, angry, weaponized people.
I know. I think maybe it's like we moved to states where people are more in line with the way we want to live our lives, or communities. I think that's sort of the only option for functionality. Because, I mean, otherwise you end up, first of all, feeling super isolated. This is why so many people say that they feel politically homeless, especially in blue states or in Canada. And feel like they can't speak, and again, like it's really it's sad to me that the left doesn't care that they're hurting people who are their friends. Like it's like, how does it make your friend feel to see like, block me and unfriend me if you voted for Trump or something like that? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, thanks, bud. Like, I'm not a human anymore.
No, it's like, this is an inclusive space, so you have to leave. Right?
Yeah,
They
like,
can't even see it. And they have unfriended and canceled and ostracized anybody in their community who doesn't think the way they do, to the point where they live in such an echo chamber. Anyone who disagrees with them just, keeps their mouth shut. I hear that all the time of people working in really liberal environments, that they just don't say anything when everyone's assuming they agree with them about whatever leftist policies they're talking about.
Yeah.
So they never hear any alternative viewpoints. The only so-called alternative viewpoints are the ones that are filtered through their propaganda. It's like, oh, Amy Goodman says this is what right-wing people believe. So that's what they actually believe the right-wing people believe.
Yeah. I mean, and who wants to get into an argument? If you're in a social situation, you really want to have an argument about politics? Like, I don't. And I do, like if somebody else brings something up, then I will say things sort of briefly. And then I usually just change the subject, like what I was telling you this story about my friend earlier, where I was like, well, they're not legal immigrants, they're illegal immigrants. No, and I was like, yep, that's what's happening. Sorry. What? I was like, this is what Trump was elected to do. Sorry. Right. Anyway, let's talk about something else. But like, I'm just gonna let you know. Like,
they don't believe Trump was legitimately elected, even though they believe that people who thought that Biden was illegitimately elected should go to jail, or be complete, at the very least be censored. That it was treason to question the 2020 election.
Right.
But they don't believe we just had a real election this time. They think Trump was somehow corruptly installed, that it wasn't a real election. They can't look around and see it. That a lot of people despise the left right now. I mean, they can't look at, even though the polls are in front of their face, that 80% of people disagree with the way, with men being legally allowed to be women, that to be recognized as female. they still can't understand that they're losers, that people don't agree with them.
I mean, maybe this all will just create more support for Trump, or, you know, I don't know if JD Vance is going to run next time around. I hope so. I think he's an incredibly smart, ethical guy. Sorry, Anna. I just accidentally kicked my little dog while she was trying to eat. But, you know, like, I guess I hope it does. I mean, if they had a chance of turning favor towards the Democrats and towards like leftist ideals, I don't think that this is going to help. Right?
No, I don't think it's going to help. And I think you were right earlier when you said people are going to move to places that are more ideologically aligned with what they believe. I don't know how the United States is going to hold if that keeps happening. There's such a divide between the red states and the blue states. And from what I can see, that, you know, living in a blue state, we don't have a single national Republican representative or senator, like that. All of our congressional contingencies, delegation is Democrat. Our governor is Democrat. Our state legislature is overwhelmingly Democrat, super majority Democrat. Our state Supreme Court is all Democrats. And this state is a shit show, and they can't see it. Like, our educational outcomes are the worst in the world. And, well, not in the world, but in the country. We're always like ranked 52nd under everybody: Mississippi, Puerto Rico, Guam. Like, but, you know, if you count all the territories, we're below 50th. We're the last. Our kids can't read. We don't have any doctors. We're just a mess. Everybody's poor. Everybody's broke. The violence is insane. And then when I say these things, you know, I'll mention this on Facebook and talk about the absolute crisis in the healthcare system that's going on here. We're like at a third world level in terms of having no providers here. And inevitably, somebody I went to college with, who's overly educated, wonky liberal, will say, well, actually, I looked it up and it's not as bad as you say in New Mexico. It says here it's not bad at all. Meanwhile, I'm trying to find a neurologist to see a patient having seizures that I shouldn't be managing as a nurse practitioner. And I can't get someone in with neurology for 18 months because we don't have any doctors. Like, I'm living here at ground zero. And liberals are telling me that what I'm perceiving isn't actually true because they read online that it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I feel this is similar to a lot of the conversations that I'm having it, but, you know, in different contexts, where people are just saying things that are absolutely not true. And you know, when you tell them the truth, it's like, it doesn't register. Like, it's just like they scroll past. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sink in. They still stick to their narrative, even when you say, no, that's not the case. Actually, what's happening is this. It doesn't, you know.
No, they don't see it. And I'll try to tell them, and it's even people here who are like, well, why can't we fix it? Why all these upper middle class, blue no matter who voters can't understand that the policies of the people they elected have created the crisis we're living in, and more action on their part is unlikely to solve it unless they completely change their strategy, like change whoever they're serving, because for some reason they're destroying the blue states. There's some reason they're doing this. Some reason they're letting Portland and Eugene be completely lawless. There's some reason they're letting the looting of so-called shoplifting happening all over California. There's some reason they're allowing us to descend into absolute chaos.
Yeah. Revolution.
Is that it? It was for revolution.
The communist revolution. It's so fun. I like you. I always feel like a cliche too, because I just have rolled my eyes for so many years at all these Americans who would be like, that's communism. The communists are coming. It's like, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you even think a communist is? Like,
communists are taking over. It's so true. Like, all the nuns who were always telling me how bad communism was and how it's seeping into America were actually right. They weren't crazy. They were mean. But Reagan was right. Like, this is insane that it's true that Marxists took over our higher educational system. Now almost everybody with a degree in social sciences or working in the nonprofit sector literally has communist beliefs, whether or not they label them that.
Yeah.
It's true.
I know that you have to get going. Sorry, I just noticed the time. It's 8:07. Mary Lou has a hard cutoff, so she has to end things. But this is Where Are All the Women? And we're here every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you have like questions or things that you want us to talk about, you can message me on Substack or on Patreon or something like that, or post those ideas in the comments below. I'm not promising anything, but we're open to ideas. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Mary Lou's on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton, and on Twitter at ML_Singleton. I'm sorry, X at Meghan E. Murphy. We didn't talk, I completely forgot about the Trump Elon fallout, which I was highly entertained by.
It was 20 years ago.
So entertaining. It does feel like 20 years ago. Very entertaining, though. It's like, men are such big babies. That's my main takeaway. I was like, you are such a big baby.
I don't even know how it resolved. And did they make up? Was it even real? Was it all just professional wrestling, kayfabe for us for our enjoyment? I don't know. But we're on to riots. We don't have to think that's ancient history.
I don't think it matters very much, but I did. Elon clearly doesn't have a lot of self-control. He posts what he wants to on the internet, and he's very ego-driven. Yeah, they're both pretty ego-driven, I think, and having fallouts with people when they feel like their power is questioned or threatened, or not even their power, I guess, but their, status or righteousness, or I don't even know. But, Elon is a bit silly, and I think looked quite silly in all of this. It's like, okay, Trump pulled your EV mandate. Good. EV mandates are stupid and awful, actually, I think. And you're not the president, bud.
Exactly.
Sorry.
You bought the presidency, but you're not actually the president. Anyway.
What he did was a really good thing. What Elon did to help Trump get elected was a really good thing. What he did for X was a really good thing. But, you're grown-ups. Don't have these public emotional spats. Trump's on the Epstein list. It's of course he is. Of course he's in those logs. That doesn't mean that he pedophiled somebody, but of course he's there. Duh. And what is the point of saying that? What are you trying to say? What are you implying, you dum-dum? You know what I mean?
I'm still not even sure it was real, because I don't know what's real. But I do have to go. All right.
Okay, sorry. Okay, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next Wednesday night. Thank you. Thanks, Mary Lou. Bye.
Bye. Good to see you.